The sky fractured with a silver light, sharp and cold, cutting through Earth's atmosphere like a blade. Cities froze mid-breath, caught between awe and terror as shapes larger than continents hovered silently above. No one spoke at first. No one moved. And then a voice came. Not through speakers, not through radio waves, but as if the world itself had heard it. Humans of Earth, it began, calm yet absolute. The Council has observed your species. You have crossed boundaries, violated balance, and jeopardized peace. Earth is now under our judgment. Surrender your world or face annihilation. Every nation's leaders trembled. Every military command center lit up with alarms. But amid the panic, there was a deeper, quieter stir, a fire humans had carried for millennia, one that could not be extinguished by the cold voice of distant overlords. In New York, atop a shattered skyline still scarred from previous wars, Commander Elias Marin stood watching the sky. His face was lined with both exhaustion and determination. His hand gripped the railing of the observation deck as if it were a lifeline. Around him, soldiers shuffled nervously, waiting for orders. "They're bigger, stronger, smarter," murmured Lieutenant Kara Vance, her voice betraying a mix of fear and defiance. Elias didn't answer immediately. He felt the weight of every human heartbeat in the city below. The people he had sworn to protect weren't just statistics or strategy. They were fragile sparks of life, each carrying dreams, loves, failures, and hope. And yet somehow he believed in them. "We have one choice," he said finally, voice steady, carrying across the deck like a drumbeat. "We fight, and we fight as humans." In less than an hour, the Council's emissaries descended. Their ships opened with a soft hiss, releasing light that painted everything in colors humans had no words for. From the light emerged beings of impossible geometry, shifting and gleaming, their eyes, or whatever counted as eyes, studying Earth as one might examine a dying plant. "We will give you 30 hours to surrender," the voice echoed across the globe. "After that, your resistance will be meaningless." The world braced. Families huddled in shelters. Soldiers scrambled across borders, and leaders whispered frantic counsel in rooms hidden behind steel walls. Yet beneath the fear, a quiet rebellion kindled. In a small laboratory in Geneva, Dr. Leora Sands worked tirelessly, her fingers flying over controls and holographic projections. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a warrior. But she carried a mind that could outthink armies and outmaneuver death itself. "If they want war," she whispered to herself, eyes fixed on the alien symbols flickering on the screens, "then we'll give them a war they'll never forget." By nightfall, the first human signals reached the Council ships. They were not pleas for mercy. They were declarations, messages scrolled across Earth's communication networks, sent simultaneously in every language. "We are humans. We do not surrender. We do not yield. We will fight." Somewhere in Tokyo, a young artist named Renji clasped a brush, painting a mural on the side of a building. It showed a human standing unbowed, fists raised, staring defiantly into a sky filled with impossible invaders. Children peeked from behind walls, watching their hero's image grow larger, bolder, alive with the fire of hope. In the deserts of Africa, miners and engineers hacked together crude devices, rockets, and shields. They did not have the technology of the Council. They had imagination, desperation, and courage. Three things that even the most advanced intelligence sometimes underestimated. And in the mountains of Patagonia, a small band of survivors from decades of climate disasters trained silently, knowing that what came next was not just survival, it was a statement. Humanity would answer not with logic or reason, but with heart, with grit, with finality. The first night passed. Humanity did not sleep. The Council's warning remained, etched in the sky by alien light. 30 hours. The clock was ticking. Elias stood again on the observation deck, gazing at the massive hovering ships. He whispered to the wind as if it could carry his words into the void. "You may be stronger. You may be smarter. But you will never understand us." Below, the city held its breath, poised on the edge of destruction, yet burning with a strange, stubborn light that not even the Council could extinguish. The war had not started yet, but it had already begun. Humanity was awake. Humanity had chosen. And whatever came next, the Council would learn that humans did not yield. They fought with fire in their hearts, and the world was about to remember it. The sun rose over Earth, but it brought no warmth. The sky remained a strange, metallic silver, reflecting the immense shapes of the Council ships. People on the street stopped, staring upward. Birds circled nervously, their cries swallowed by the alien hum that resonated from above. Every human, from farmers in India to engineers in Germany, felt the same pulse. Fear. But beneath it, a flicker of something more. Defiance. Commander Elias Marin's voice cut across the military network. We have 30 hours. 30 hours to show them that Earth is not a planet to conquer. Every city, every group, every human, prepare. This is not a rehearsal. This is our declaration. In Geneva, Dr. Leora Sands and her team worked feverishly. Her lab was a chaos of wires, screens, and energy readings. The Council's ships had shields unlike anything humans had encountered. Impenetrable, adaptable, alive. Yet every problem had a solution, and humans had a habit of finding them where none existed. We can't match them ship for ship, she muttered, adjusting a holographic display. But we can outthink them. We can turn their strengths into weaknesses. Across the world, the first human acts of resistance began. In São Paulo, engineers converted oil refineries into massive electromagnetic pulse generators. In Moscow, survivors dug tunnels beneath the city, rigging them with explosives and devices of their own design. In the plains of Montana, farmers loaded tractors and harvesters with crude but deadly modifications. Humanity had no army that could match the Council, so they would fight with everything they had, even their bare hands if necessary. And then, without warning, the Council acted. One ship detached from the fleet, descending slowly over the Atlantic Ocean. Its surface shimmered with shifting patterns of light, as if the air itself bent around it. From it emerged small drones, sleek, sharp, silent. They swept across the ocean, analyzing, probing, calculating. The humans struck first. Elias's command came from New York. Initiate Operation Iron Pulse. Across the Atlantic, EMP devices detonated simultaneously, sending a wave of energy toward the drones. There was no loud boom, just a flash of white light, a ripple through the air, and then silence. The first wave of Council drones fell, melted into lifeless metal. The Council did not respond with anger. They responded with curiosity. Their voice, calm yet chilling, echoed from the hovering ships. Curious. Your primitive defenses can harm us. Interesting. Continue. The words spread like wildfire. Humanity did not hear threat. They heard acknowledgement. And in acknowledgement, they found opportunity. In London, a small team led by a young tactician named Mara Ellen launched a fleet of scavenged aircraft, each modified with experimental weapons. They dove toward a Council ship that hovered silently over the Thames. Explosions erupted, not enough to destroy the ship, but enough to surprise it. The ship shimmered, recalibrated, and retreated slightly. Mara's team cheered. Humanity had just touched the untouchable. In the deserts of Africa, miners and engineers watched as their crude launchers sent rocks and molten metal toward another Council ship. The projectiles exploded against its shields, and for the first time the ship flinched. The Council had never expected humans to improvise so creatively, to use imagination as a weapon. Back in New York, Elias watched the live feeds from every continent. Soldiers, civilians, engineers, and even children contributed in small ways that together formed a mosaic of resistance. Humanity's defiance was raw, messy, and beautiful, and the Council noticed. They are unpredictable, the alien voice admitted, faintly laced with what humans could almost call frustration. They are resilient beyond calculation. Elias exhaled slowly. Good, he muttered. Let them feel what humanity looks like when cornered. By nightfall, the first casualties were reported. Civilians caught in crossfire, cities scorched by experimental Council weapons. But every loss was met with resistance, every setback answered with renewed strategy. In a hospital in Cairo, a nurse whispered to a dying child, "We fight for every heartbeat, every laugh, every dream. You matter. You are part of this war too." Humanity was learning fast. They were vulnerable, fragile, but they were alive. And the Council had underestimated the most dangerous force of all, human will. Elias and Leora communicated across secure channels. They expected us to surrender, Leora said, fatigue heavy in her voice. But they don't understand. Surrender isn't in our nature. No, Elias agreed. It's never been, and they'll find that out soon enough. Humanity fights not because we are perfect, but because we refuse to lose. Not even to gods. In the distance, one council ship began to descend closer to Earth's surface. Its movement was deliberate, calculating. But now, for the first time, there was hesitation in its patterns. Something that had never occurred to the council before, that humans would fight with everything they had, no matter the odds, no matter the fear. And in that hesitation, a spark of hope ignited across the planet. Humanity had struck the first blow, and the world was beginning to understand something vital. They were not merely defending Earth, they were defining what it meant to be human. The war had begun, not with surrender, not with despair, but with a single unyielding truth. Humans never yielded. The world had changed in hours. Streets that once rang with laughter now resonated with the hum of drones and the crackle of emergency broadcasts. Cities were awake, but not with peace. They were awake with purpose, fear, and the raw, aching pulse of survival. Commander Elias Marin moved through New York like a man carrying the weight of all humanity. Each step on the cracked pavement reminded him of what was at stake. Families trapped in collapsing buildings, children staring at skies they couldn't comprehend, soldiers who were young, terrified, and still standing. He spoke to them, not as a commander to soldiers, but as a human to humans. "Do not forget who we are," he said, his voice low but steady, reverberating through the chaos. "We are not perfect. We will falter. We will cry. But we do not surrender." In a small shelter beneath Paris, Dr. Leora Sands watched energy readings flicker across her screens. She had barely slept in the last 30 hours. Her team, brilliant minds from every corner of the globe, were exhausted, yet none of them had stopped. "We're losing ground on the satellites," muttered Dr. Kenji Mori, rubbing his eyes. "If the Council adapts faster than we do, everything could collapse in minutes." Leora's jaw tightened. She knew the truth. Humanity was fragile. They were fragile in ways the Council could not understand, emotionally, psychologically. But those same flaws made them unpredictable. "We can't be calculated," she thought. "And that is our weapon." In Tokyo, Renji, the young artist, sketched feverishly in a corner of a hospital-turned-command center. His murals, once symbols of hope, were now maps of the city's weak points, improvised defenses, and escape routes. The Council didn't anticipate that humans would fight with creativity, with art, with love and desperation as tools of war. "We're being hunted," whispered a nurse, her hands trembling as she bandaged a wounded soldier. "And we're still standing." "Yes," Renji replied softly. "Because standing is all we know. Because we are human." The first Council assault had been repelled, but it left scars deeper than steel and fire. Entire blocks of New York were gone, swept away by precision strikes that seemed to anticipate every military move. Survivors stumbled through rubble, gripping the hands of the living, whispering prayers for those who were not. And yet, in the midst of ruin, they fought. They rescued. They rebuilt. They resisted. Elias walked through one ruined neighborhood, reaching a child crouched under the shadow of a fallen building. The boy's eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of terror and defiance. Elias knelt beside him. "Do you know why we fight?" he asked gently. The boy shook his head, trembling. "Because we must. Because we cannot surrender. Because no matter how big they are, no matter how powerful, they can never take what we feel here." Elias said, placing a hand over the child's heart. "They can't take this." Across continents, humanity's ingenuity continued to bloom. In Siberia, a small team of engineers used geothermal energy to power devices that disrupted Council communications. In Nairobi, civilians rigged everyday tools into effective defense weapons. Everywhere, humans adapted. They bled, they cried, they faltered, but they always found a way forward. And yet the psychological toll was real. Dreams were haunted by alien shapes. Screams echoed in sleep, and grief settled like a stone in the chest. Mara Ellen, once confident and decisive, now walked the halls of her command center with a quiet desperation. Each decision carried lives, each hesitation a potential death sentence. She whispered to herself, "We are heroes, yes, but heroes bleed too." The Council, observing from their ships, began to adjust. Their calm, calculating voice grew sharper, tinged with what humans could sense as irritation. "They are unpredictable, emotionally unstable, illogical, yet effective. Continue observing." Humans didn't hear threat. They heard opportunity. And in their hearts, a stubborn flame burned brighter than ever. In Patagonia, a small band of survivors watched as a Council drone scanned the mountains. They had no heavy weapons, no advanced technology, just their instinct, their unity, and their will to survive. They moved silently, communicating in hand signals, each action precise, each heartbeat synchronized. Humanity thrived not in perfection, but in determination, and the Council could not compute it. Elias returned to his command center as night fell again. Cities glimmered faintly beneath the alien shadows, and he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. Fear had not vanished, but it had been transformed into something stronger. Resolve. They may have power, he whispered to Leora over the secure line, but they cannot take what we carry inside us. They cannot take our courage, our hope, our stubborn humanity. And that is why we will win. For the first time since the ships appeared, humanity felt something they had not dared feel. Not safety, not relief, but certainty. They had been tested. They had been terrified. And yet, in the weight of fire and grief, they had risen. The war had entered a new phase. The Council would escalate. Humanity would bleed, but no force in the galaxy could extinguish what it meant to be human. And humanity, in its fragile, defiant glory, was ready to prove it. The world shook as the Council's fleet descended closer. Their ships, enormous and alien, moved like dark storms across the sky, each one brimming with the power to erase cities in seconds. The hum of their engines filled every corner of the planet, vibrating through the bones of humans who refused to bow. Commander Elias Marin stood at the center of the New York command hub, surrounded by screens showing every continent, every front line. He looked at the faces of his officers, tired, determined, some haunted by the losses of the first waves of attack. They think fear will break us, Elias said, voice cutting through the tension. They are wrong. Humanity does not break. From the deserts of Nevada to the plains of Ukraine, humans mobilized. Leora Sands coordinated with engineers in Shanghai, Cape Town, and Buenos Aires, creating improvised devices that disrupted the Council's communications, scrambled targeting systems, and even turned their own drones against them. The Council had power, but humans had unpredictability, creativity, and the kind of resilience that could not be programmed. The first major strike came over Tokyo. Mara Ellen's tactical unit, having studied the patterns of the Council ships, launched a coordinated attack using everything they could muster: EMP bursts, magnetic projectiles, and high-altitude drones rigged with explosives. The Council ship, sleek and shimmering, wavered as the assault hit in unexpected places. Mara's voice rang through her comms, sharp and commanding. Hit every angle they think is safe. Hit what they cannot predict. Explosions tore across the sky. The Council's shields, adaptive and powerful, flared and twisted in response, but they faltered just enough. For the first time, a Council ship seemed uncertain, its movements jittering, almost human in hesitation. Across the Atlantic, engineers in London and Lisbon synchronized EMP pulses. Ships above the ocean flickered, some falling from the sky, their metal shells clattering into waves below. Humanity was not strong in conventional terms, they were fragile. Exhausted and outmatched, but they were dangerous, because they refused to give in. In the midst of the battle, Elias received a report from Mara. Several civilian districts were under threat, unable to move. His heart clenched, but he did not hesitate. We fight for every life, he reminded himself. He ordered rapid deployment units to extract civilians while other squads diverted Council attention. It was chaotic, terrifying, but humanity moved as one. Each act of bravery compounding into a tide the Council could not fully predict. In Cairo, Dr. Leora Sands watched a live feed from an African engineering hub. Civilians, miners, and retired soldiers launched a swarm of improvised rockets at a descending Council vessel. They had no hope of destroying it completely, but their attacks forced it to change trajectory, sparing nearby cities. She whispered to herself, "They are defiant. They fight because they choose life, because they choose humanity." Meanwhile, the Council's voice, calm but sharper now, cut across the globe. "You are efficient, illogical, fragile, yet persistent. Why do you fight despite all probability?" A soldier in Montana shouted back at the sky, fists raised, voice hoarse from shouting over explosions. "Because we are human. Because we refuse to lose." That single act of defiance echoed through millions. Humanity, scattered and battered, began to coordinate in ways the Council had never anticipated. Communication networks, previously thought vulnerable, now pulsed with a shared will. Messages of hope, instructions for resistance, and coordinates for strikes moved faster than any weapon. And yet, the cost was immense. Cities were scarred, millions displaced, thousands lost. Mara, standing over a console, watched as one of her best units was hit by a council strike. Her hands shook as she whispered, "We cannot save everyone, but we can fight for the next and the next and the next." Even in the darkest moments, humanity's courage held. Children carried messages across rubble. Volunteers rescued strangers. Engineers built weapons in makeshift labs while bombs fell. It was messy. It was terrifying. It was human. It was messy. It was terrifying. It was human. Elias looked out across the horizon as night fell. Fires burned across continents, reflecting in the alien ships above. The Council believed they had calculated humanity's limits. They had not. Humanity's limits were not defined by fear or power or exhaustion. They were defined by will and the will to survive. "They thought they could erase us," Elias said quietly to Leora over the secure line. "But they forgot one thing. Humans fight with their hearts, not just their minds, and that they cannot control." The first global battle was over, though no one called it a victory. Cities were scarred, lives lost, and the sky remained filled with the alien fleet. Yet every human, from the highest general to the youngest child, had learned something vital. They could fight back. They could resist. They could defy. And as the fires of defiance burned across the planet, the Council began to realize that Earth was not a world they could conquer. Not through fear, not through power, not through calculation. Humanity was something else entirely. Something unpredictable, something unstoppable. The sky over Earth shimmered with alien light, a relentless cascade of energy from the Council ships. Cities trembled, oceans boiled under the heat of hovering vessels, and the wind carried the smell of fire and ozone. Humanity had survived the first wave, but survival now demanded ingenuity beyond what anyone had imagined. Commander Elias Marin stood on the roof of the New York Command Hub, his gaze tracing the jagged outline of the alien fleet. His uniform was scorched, his face streaked with ash and sweat, yet his eyes burned with determination. "They've underestimated us," he said to Lieutenant Kara Vance, who stood beside him, rifle in hand. "They think the sky belongs to them. We'll show them it belongs to whoever refuses to yield." In Geneva, Dr. Leora Sands paced her lab like a caged hawk. Screens flickered with streams of alien data she barely understood. Algorithms designed to anticipate human movement. For the first time, she realized the Council was beginning to fear them. Not the weapons, but the unpredictability of human thought. "They adapt fast," murmured her assistant, Theo, his voice tense. "But we can outthink them." Leora's fingers danced across the holographic interface. "Not outthink them," she corrected him. "Out-surprise them. We'll weaponize what they can't predict. Our chaos, our mistakes, our flaws. That is our power." Across the Pacific, Mara Ellen orchestrated a daring maneuver. Using scavenged satellites, she created an artificial storm to mask a fleet of improvised aircraft. The Council had sensors that could detect almost everything, but they couldn't calculate the randomness of a hurricane born from human engineering. The first strike of the night was audacious. Human pilots dove into the eye of the storm, attacking a Council ship that hovered over Tokyo. Explosions rippled across its shields, not enough to destroy it, but enough to force it to retreat. For Mara, the thrill was bitter. Every victory came at a cost. She could see the faces of her fallen pilots in her mind, a reminder that every triumph was borrowed from grief. Meanwhile, in the heart of Africa, civilians launched devices powered by solar grids and geothermal heat, turning the desert into a battleground of ingenuity. Rockets, EMP pulses, and even clever decoys forced Council drones into confusion. The aliens could calculate speed, trajectory, and force, but they could not calculate imagination. And then there was the psychological warfare. Humanity learned to fight not just with weapons, but with heart. Messages of hope, resistance, and defiance were broadcast across the globe. Children sang songs from their shelters. Artists painted murals on rubble. Volunteers carried supplies through streets that were no longer safe. Each act, small or large, became part of the resistance. The Council's voice, calm yet increasingly tense, rang across the skies. "They are efficient beyond expectation. Their cohesion, their unpredictability, it is unacceptable." In Patagonia, A group of survivors developed a daring plan. Using the rugged mountains and narrow valleys, they funneled a fleet of council drones into traps, rigged with magnetic explosives. When the first drone fell, a cheer rose that could be heard across the valley, a human cry that carried defiance louder than any weapon. Elias watched the reports flood in. The council, once calm and omnipotent, was now reacting. Their movements jittered, their strikes became hesitant, and every hesitation gave humans leverage. "This is the edge of infinity," Elias said quietly over the comms to Leora. "We've reached the point where fear and courage meet. They can't calculate what we feel here. That is the battlefield where humans are strongest." Leora's eyes flickered with understanding. "We fight because we are flawed. We fight because we feel. And the moment they underestimate that, we will win." Even as cities burned and lives were lost, humanity's spirit refused to break. The council had power beyond comprehension. Yet humans had something it could not touch: the spark of soul, the fire of imagination, and the stubborn, unyielding refusal to surrender. As night deepened, a new wave of attacks was launched. Mara's pilots, Leora's engineers, Elias's soldiers, and civilians everywhere moved in concert, not perfectly, not always safely, but with an intensity that left the council struggling to adapt. Ships were forced to retreat, drones malfunctioned, and the alien fleet began to hesitate. Somewhere over Europe, a single child's broadcast reached millions. "We are humans. We fight, we do not bow. We do not yield, and we will survive." It was a simple message, yet its echo was deafening. Humanity was not just resisting. They were teaching the council a truth no algorithm could process. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were resilient. Humans were unstoppable. And as the alien ships hovered over a planet that refused to break, Elias clenched his fist, looking at the lights of countless cities shining against the darkness. "Let them come," he whispered. "Let them see what it means to face humanity at its most desperate, most alive, most defiant. We will not falter. We will not surrender. We will answer with finality." The war was no longer about survival alone. It had become a testament of courage, of heart, and of the unbreakable spirit of humanity. And the council, for the first time, realized they were in danger not from weapons, but from something far greater: humans themselves. The night was alive with fire and electricity. Across continents, humanity was in motion, each heartbeat synchronized to the rhythm of resistance. Cities were scarred, yet every scar was a badge of defiance. The council's fleet, once a symbol of unstoppable power, now hovered cautiously, adapting, recalculating, but never fully anticipating what humans would do next. Commander Elias Marin stood on the roof of the New York command hub, overlooking the chaos. Explosions painted the sky in oranges and blues, shadows of smoke stretching like fingers across the city. He knew the truth. Survival alone was not enough. To turn the tide, humanity had to strike where the council could not defend, to show them that Earth was not a passive world. It was alive with cunning, courage, and unyielding heart. "We need something impossible," Elias muttered to Kara Vance, his second-in-command. "They adapt fast. We need to hit them where they least expect it." In Geneva, Dr. Leora Sands studied the council's communication network, a complex web of pulses and signals no human was meant to decode. Yet through sheer determination, she discovered a weakness, not in their technology but in their arrogance. The council relied on predictability, order, and efficiency. Humanity thrived on chaos, and chaos could be weaponized. "If we can force them to overextend," Leora said, pointing at the flickering holograms, "we can turn every advantage they have into a liability. But it will cost everything." Across the globe, human engineers and tacticians coordinated like never before. Mara Ellen led a team into the ruins of Paris, using collapsed buildings as cover to launch a wave of counterattacks. In Siberia, miners used geothermal vents to propel rockets into council drones. In the deserts of Africa, civilians unleashed EMP pulses that sent enemy ships into uncontrolled spins. Every attack was a puzzle piece in a plan so intricate it could only exist in the human mind. And then came the critical sacrifice. A council strike was heading toward a crowded hospital in Cairo. Evacuation was impossible. Civilians would die. Without hesitation, a small squad of volunteers, engineers, soldiers, and ordinary citizens, intercepted the strike using rudimentary but effective countermeasures. The devices worked, but the squad did not survive. Messages of their heroism spread across the world, igniting a wave of courage and unity that no council ship could measure. "We fight for them," Mara whispered over comms, tears in her eyes. "For everyone who cannot fight. For every life that deserves hope." The council, observing the planet, began to shift tactics. Their voice, calm but increasingly tense, carried across every network. "They are more unpredictable than calculation allows. Their sacrifices, illogical. Their persistence, unacceptable." It was the first crack in the armor of absolute control. The council had never faced a species that weaponized emotion, hope, and ingenuity together. Their algorithms could not account for grief, courage, or the spark of imagination. Humanity's flaws, their irrationality, their recklessness, their stubborn hearts, were now their deadliest weapons. In Tokyo, Mara's fleet of pilots executed a daring maneuver.
Using chaotic weather patterns engineered by Leora's teams, they launched a simultaneous assault on 3 council ships.
Explosions lit the horizon, and for the first time, a council vessel plummeted uncontrollably, crashing into the sea with a deafening roar. Humanity had done the impossible. Elias clenched his fists, watching the reports flood in. The council's hesitation was growing, their strikes less precise, their formations unraveling. Humans were not merely surviving, they were dictating the terms of engagement. "We've reached the tipping point," Elias said over the comms. "Every act of courage, every sacrifice, every spark of ingenuity, it all leads here. The council is beginning to fear us, and that fear will be our weapon." In Patagonia, survivors rigged a mountainous trap, guiding council drones into valleys lined with magnetic explosives. Ships crashed, drones disintegrated, and humanity's laughter rang out over the chaos, an incalculable variable that no algorithm could predict. Leora, exhausted but triumphant, looked at the data streaming in from every front. "We've shown them what humans are capable of, not in perfection but in resilience. Not in strength but in heart. We've reached the moment where survival becomes victory." Even as night deepened, humans continued to rise. Children carried messages of hope. Civilians improvised weapons. Engineers and tacticians pushed limits beyond imagination. Every corner of Earth became a battlefield, and every human a soldier. The council could no longer move with certainty. They could no longer predict humanity. And in that chaos, in that unquantifiable storm of courage and ingenuity, the first whispers of true hope spread across the planet. Humanity could win. The turning point had arrived. And humanity, scarred but unbroken, prepared to strike with finality. The sky trembled as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. The council fleet hovered in calculated silence, their massive forms blotting out the stars. Their voice, usually calm and omnipotent, now carried a sharp edge, tinged with confusion and, unfamiliar to them, fear. "Humans of Earth," it spoke across every communication channel, "your persistence is inefficient. Surrender now and further destruction may be avoided." Below, humanity did not quiver. They had endured destruction, heartbreak, and terror beyond measure. Yet their resolve had only strengthened. Commander Elias Marin stood atop the New York command hub, his eyes scanning the alien armada. Beside him, Lieutenant Caravans held her rifle, her knuckles white but her stance unwavering. "No," Elias whispered. "Not to the council, but to the world. We will answer, with finality. Every human act of resistance, every invention, every improvised weapon had led to this moment." Dr. Leora Sands, coordinating from Geneva, initiated the final phase of their plan. Across continents, engineers, scientists, and civilians synchronized a global assault, a network of EMP bursts, magnetic pulses, and destabilizing energy waves designed to exploit the Council's single flaw, reliance on predictability. From Siberia to Patagonia, deserts to oceans, humans became one living organism. Traps triggered, drones malfunctioned, and Council ships wavered in confusion. The fleet, once the embodiment of absolute power, now faltered under the weight of human ingenuity and sheer determination. In the skies above Tokyo, Mara Ellen led the final charge. Her aircraft weaved through turbulence and laser fire, striking at the Council's command vessel. Explosions rocked the city below, yet her voice rang over the comms, steady, commanding, inspiring. For every life they took, for every city they tried to erase, we fight. Today, humanity rises as one. Across the globe, ordinary citizens became soldiers. Children sent encoded signals to misdirect drones. Engineers repurposed satellites to create blinding electromagnetic storms. Volunteers sacrificed everything to save strangers. Every human action, no matter how small, was a declaration. Earth would not yield. The Council, observing their fleet unravel, began to panic. Their calculations faltered. Their coordinated strikes became erratic. For the first time in eons, they faced a species they could not dominate through intellect or power alone. Humanity's unpredictability, resilience, and sheer emotional force had become their undoing. Elias clenched his fists, eyes burning. He knew that this battle was more than survival. It was a testament to everything humans had ever been. Fragile, flawed, but unyielding. "They think fear will make us surrender," he said to Kara. "But courage makes us unstoppable." As the final wave of attack struck, Council ships spiraled out of control. EMP bursts overloaded systems. Magnetic traps ripped through their hulls. Chaos, unpredictability, and human spirit became weapons of finality. One by one, the alien vessels faltered, then fell. The sky, once dominated by impossibly advanced shapes, now began to clear, and humanity watched. Across every continent, people emerged from shelters, rubble, and ruins. They were exhausted, scarred, and grieving, yet their eyes shone with something indescribable: triumph. It was not the triumph of perfection or of superior power. It was the triumph of being human, resilient, imaginative, and unbreakable. Dr. Leora Sands allowed herself a rare smile. "They underestimated us," she whispered. "They never understood the human heart." In the streets of New York, Mara Ellen embraced survivors, tears streaking her soot-covered face. Children laughed despite the ruin around them. Fires from the battle still burned, painting the night in orange light, but it was a light of hope, not despair. Elias stood at the center of the command hub, looking at the horizon. Silence fell, a heavy but holy quiet. Humanity had faced annihilation, yet they had answered with courage, ingenuity, and finality. The Council had learned far too late that humans were not a species to control. They were a force to respect, to fear, and to marvel at. "We are human," Elias said, voice carrying across the city. "We survive, we fight, we endure, and we will never surrender." And the world, battered but unbroken, whispered its own truth in every language. On every continent, humans do not yield, humans endure, humans triumph. The Council withdrew, humbled and wary, leaving Earth scarred but alive. Humanity had won not because they were the strongest, but because they were human, fragile yet indomitable, reckless yet wise, flawed yet extraordinary. The fires of war faded, leaving behind a planet forever changed, yet alive with possibility. Humanity had answered the ultimate question. When faced with annihilation, they would rise, fight, and endure. And the memory of that defiance would echo across the stars, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of humankind. The war was over. The Earth remained. Humanity had answered. With finality,